What's up, guys? This is Pete, aka Characters, and I am here for the official launch podcast for 100 Hands, the highly awaited project. Well, at least I'm highly awaiting it. I think my friend Carl is here as well because we've been working on this for quite some time trying to get all the details right. How's it going, Carl? You right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah.
Cool. Let me just turn you up a little bit because you're a little bit quiet there. So really today, if you're listening to this podcast, it means either that you've broken into my house and instead of burglaring me, you've just chosen to listen to a podcast on my computer, or it means the book's available. So I'm going to go with the latter, hopefully. And yeah, it's available on carrotcorner.com, my website, and you can basically go there and purchase it through a company called Gumroad. It's very secure and fast, and you can just buy a copy. The sale price is £29.99, whatever that is for dollars or your preferred currency. So yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit today. Carl, you're the only other person apart from me, well, not only the only person to have read any of the book, but you're actually the only person in the world to have read all of the book before anyone else in the world has read any of the book. How does that feel?
That feels amazing. I feel really privileged. Yeah, it's great.
You've read 100 Hands that no one else has even seen. We've done a few little taster podcasts on these, and I've shown you guys some of the hands before. Go back and check those out if you're considering buying the book but you want a better flavour for it. We're not going to go over any technical poker stuff today because we want to just talk about basically what the book is like, and I want to get Carl's feedback on it. So Carl's actually been my editor for this book, which has been awesome, and he's been sort of saying to me, you're rambling on for ages in this point, or this point doesn't make any sense, or you've wrote from, or what was it, form instead of from 163 times or something like that. So
yeah, it was a bit of that.
It's been super useful anyway. So Carl, what do you think are the main sort of differences between 100 Hands and the Grinder's Manual for anyone that's read TGM and is wondering what this book is like in comparison?
Well, I guess 100 Hands is more interactive. You're encouraging people in TGM to interact with the content and think about what the right answers might be and that sort of thing. But you're obviously going to get more of that with a workbook. So that's a big difference straight away. And something that I'd actually say I found when I was reading through the book that there was a big temptation to just, having seen the action in the hand, just skip straight to the analysis and be like, okay, what's the answer? I don't know.
Right.
But you definitely get a lot more out of this book if you really try, spend a good 10, 15 minutes trying to work out what the right strategy is beforehand.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very natural because we spend our whole life reading books, and you turn the page, you read a bit, you turn the page, you find out what happens next. And it's a very subconscious and built thing, I think, to do that with a book. It's kind of counterintuitive and somewhat cumbersome at first to look at a problem in a book and then actually try and solve it entirely yourself before reading on. And that's the thing. It's very tempting to either just move on, or it's tempting maybe to just have a kind of half-hearted attempt at it and then just be like, you know what, I'm confused, I'm going to go to the answer. But pretty important for people in the learning model of poker that they don't do that. Why is that, do you think? Why does poker lend itself to more kind of active study in general?
Well, I don't know. I guess when you're playing in game, you don't get a lot of time. So I don't know, maybe some of that carries off to out of work study as well, and people are more willing to, perhaps give up on a spot or just say, oh, it's probably this is the right answer. So, maybe that's a source of it.
Yeah, I think you do need to bridge that gap, don't you, between what you learn in game and then what buttons you can press at the table. And that was my idea with this book. It was really two things. One was to expand on the theory of the Grinder's Manual, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. We'll talk a little bit about how we think this book has moved on in difficulty and how the theory maybe has changed. The metagame has changed over the past couple of years, and to the extent that that's reflected in 100 Hands. But yeah, just as we were saying, it is very important that we approach this actively and that we don't fall into the trap of what I call learn-tertainment, the word I made up, which is all about just sort of reading for fun and trying to learn half-heartedly at the same time. It just doesn't really work with poker because it's just too far removed. The actual in-game world is so far removed from passive leisure reading or even passive study that you just have to have a more active approach. So that's what I was going for with 100 Hands. I was really trying to say to the reader, okay, you've read Grinder's Manual, we now want to move on. Can you put this stuff to the test, but also update the theory a bit because it's been a couple of years, and what have I learned? What have I come to realize? How can I explain more modern things that engines are recommending? Stuff like that. How can I get this Grinder's Manual theory to the modern day and also let people apply the stuff that is still relevant, which is like 98% of the book. So, on the theory then, how did you find it as someone that has read Grinder's Manual obviously extensively and then been coached by me over the years? How did you find it sort of picking up 100 hands for the first time and looking at all the new kind of theory in there?
Yeah, I still learned some new theory from it because, like you said, you've taken the opportunity to update some of the theory that you've learned since you wrote TGM.
Yeah.
So for me, I was picking up things like merged three betting strategies. So before I was kind of always either using a polar approach or like a linear approach. So I was always doing one thing with a particular combo.
Yeah.
But this kind of new idea of, half the time I'm going to three bet queen jack suited and the other half I'm not going to. The word that came into my head was like feathered. I don't know if you like that description, but the range looks feathered to me.
Yeah, because sometimes you're doing things and sometimes you're not, so there's like a kind of overlap. Yeah, I get it. It's nice. It's funny how the meta of poker actually evolves, isn't it? Because when we started off, we were like in, I don't know, the poker boom, post-poker boom, post-moneymaker, whatever. We're all kind of like, sometimes 3-bet this hand here, and people accepted that. They're like, okay, sometimes that gives you some balance, no problem. Then it moved on to like the polar linear thing was like just the complete essence of everything, and everyone was like, why would you sometimes do something? Either it's right or it's wrong. And now we're back to like mixed strategies where we have frequencies for doing things again, but the reasons are more sophisticated. So it's just funny how the metagame in poker evolves, and I think that every author, the real challenge for us is capturing that, explaining it clearly, and sort of defending it, because people who learn poker in one era, or even 2 years earlier, that then come to the game now can very easily get confused. It's just like, what is going on? Why is everyone now talking about merging and betting small on the turn? Back in my day, we potted the turn with polar ranges and all this kind of thing. So I guess my idea with 100 hands was to bring it in line with the modern meta and just explain what's going on, why the engines recommend some of the things that they do, but without going into like massive justifications for exactly combo by combo work. So the detail in 100 hands, it flits about a lot. Like sometimes we have quite complicated explanations of ranges, and other times we try to generalize and apply it in game a bit more. How did you find that, the kind of idea that there's like a time and a place for detail, but also there's times to just sort of generalize and get a feel for what your range is doing without explicitly spelling out every single combo? Did you find that okay when you were working through?
Yeah, I thought that was good. I mean, it stops the analysis getting too dense, because obviously if you were to try and solve every single spot theoretically and say what you're doing with every single combo and your whole range on every street and every action, all that sort of thing, it's going to be quite hard to read. So obviously you've got to strike a balance there. But I mean, there were other points where you didn't strictly have to solve the spot, because you say up front there's going to be an exploitative adjustment here. So I am interested in what the balance strategy is, but I'm not going to necessarily follow it, or I'm going to deviate from it. So there were kind of other spots where you put in more of that theoretical stuff. I thought that was good too.
Yeah, it's this idea of like, we want to know what the base strategy is, like what the launch pad is, as I call it, what we're leaving before we leave it, just so we can build our familiarity. So a lot of the time in these hand analyses, it's not just like, what should hero do? Oh, check, that's the answer, done. Next hand, that would be a terrible book. It's about why hero should do everything that he's doing, what motivates that, but also just like, what does the rest of hero's range do, and how does the action that's being recommended at the end of the hand, what leads up to that, and how does the greater strategy justify it, basically? Like, how does the way I'm playing my range justify the way I'm playing nines on this ace-jack-6 board, or whatever that you see in front of your screen there if you're on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can actually see the cover, and you can also see an example template hand. So we have gold hands and silver hands, Carl, right? So
yeah.
Would you want to explain like what the differences are and how you found the two different types of hand in the book?
Yeah, sure. So we've got hands that you played yourself, which I think are predominantly at 50s. Is that right?
Yeah, they're all 50 on Elzoom, or they're either hands that I played myself or I invented based on something I played, or they're instructive hands of how hands should be played, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And then you've got the kind of silvery hands, which are hands that have been submitted, or I guess you've volunteered them for the book, which you kind of, they come from a range of stakes, and yeah.
And they come from the study group, in particular the Carrot Corner Google Plus group, where we've got hundreds and hundreds of hand histories just all sat there with like lots of good comments and stuff. So I went through there and I just anonymously took the ones I preferred and used them for the book. Right. So what did you find one more useful than the other? Did you find that you approached the student hands differently to how you approached the coach's hands, or what went on there?
Well, I mean, I think it's good to have a range of different stakes in the book. So I think that's one of the advantages of doing it. So obviously, if it was full of like 50 NL stuff, then you wouldn't get the breadth of. I mean, I guess there might be less opportunities to talk about exploitative plays for a start.
Right.
So yeah, that was really handy.
Cool. And also just the point of view that you look at it from. I think like when you're going through the gold hands that are played by the coach, it's like trying to figure out like why has he done that on the flop. And some of them there are mistakes. You know, there's a few times where I'll put my hands up and say, this hand I didn't play quite accurately on the flop. I should have considered this instead. And I think that's really good, just as a lesson for all poker players, that this is a game where it's not possible to be perfect. And we all make mistakes, and it's good to be able to reflect upon your own mistakes objectively and not beat yourself up about it, but just say, I made A, B, and C mistakes, and I'm going to learn from them in future. And I've done that with myself a few times, even some of the hands I've played. So I'm not just critiquing my students here. Sometimes I'm actually saying they played very well, but I'm also critiquing some of my own lines too. So there's a few spots where you might look at it and think, oh, that's a bit weird, and there's an explanation for it, and there might be other spots where you think, not sure about that, and then I'm actually like, yeah, I think this is a slight mistake. So I think that's important as well, just to paint the picture that it's not all just like I'm a super poker robot that can solve every spot in the world in game. That's not true.
Yeah, naturally. I mean, obviously, like afterwards, you're gonna, question it, and sometimes you're gonna say, "I probably didn't do the right thing there." So
exactly.
Yeah.
I think I just implied that I was a poker robot that solved everything perfectly out of game there. I didn't really mean to imply that. I'm not that either, but the point is that out of game analysis will be a lot more accurate for anyone, no matter what your level actually is.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Another thing I found really useful actually was this kind of new thought process that we've got going on for post flop. What kind of betting strategy you're going to use? So kind of what factors go into deciding whether it's going to be a range bet, whether it's going to be a polarized betting strategy, or whether you're going to range check, and whether you're going to have check raising range, all that sort of thing. That was relatively new to me. So and with all of the kind of new theory that I encountered in the book, it kind of inspires me to go back to playing again. And that's another nice benefit of reading a new book. You kind of get back into the game.
That's awesome, yeah. So anyone that's kind of fallen out with the game or has just lost enthusiasm or real life's gotten in the way, I'd like to think this book stimulates you enough. It quizzes you, it tests you, it hopefully makes you want to compare how you're doing to the answers, and then that motivates you to get back into the game. So it does set a bar. It's not a book you can just read and be like, okay, I'm just going to read this and see if I learn anything. Like, if you don't attempt the exercises, you won't get nowhere near as much out of it. So it's very involved in that sense, and hopefully it can re-inspire people as well. That's the idea. It's very much like, here's a session, here's 100 hands, but time is slowing down. You can look at all of the hands for as long as you want, and you've got an expert of the format sat over your shoulder giving you advice. Like, how good would that be if we could play a session under those conditions, right? That's why I want the student to think when they pick up 100 hands. That's why the blurb for the book goes along those lines and talks about, like, this is a frozen in time session where every hand is relevant and you've got a mentor over your shoulder, but you have to try it on your own first. I think we've all wanted that pause time button, right, when we're playing a poker session at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do just sort of look at it and go, oh, I've kind of learned this new thought process, but I've only kind of read about it. Now I want to try it out. Now I want to try and get into some of these situations and see if I can work out the right strategy for that spot. And it's not just the sort of in-game enthusiasm as well, because it's kind of with people who've been playing the game for a long time. Your enthusiasm can drain away in terms of like studying out of game and reviewing hands. That can turn into a bit of a chore. But then when you read a book that's all about reviewing hands, you kind of suddenly find yourself reviewing like 5 to 10 hands after a session again, which is always what you should have been doing, but takes some motivation.
That's a good way of putting it. I think that's what I'm trying to do here, is just say to people, you must review hands. Like, the only reason I got good at poker originally was that people encouraged me on forums, go over your hands, post them for scrutiny, give your thought process, get feedback. And if I hadn't done that cycle and perfected sort of the process of that cycle, I don't think I would have got to where I am today. Like, that is it. So I'm just trying to, I guess 100 hands, what we're trying to say is, do hand review, and look, it doesn't have to be a chore. It can be really interesting, just like reading a book is. So that's the idea. So this book is obviously, it looks different from the Grounders Manual, right? That was kind of funny because I think we got talking, and then eventually you were just like, by the way, the cards that you've always used have always been just awful. And you didn't even say that. You put it nicely in the way that you always do. You're too nice, so it's difficult to know sometimes if you're really criticising me. So I thought, you know what, like for Carl to say that they're not that great, that probably means they're horrendous. So I looked through and I saw like all these, I just hated them, and I kind of revamped everything. So I guess that is important, right? Like a visually nice book is a lot easier to study than a book with ugly images, right? So that's what we've gone for here. We've tried to make it really nice looking compared to the Grinder's Manual.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of doing our best, aren't we? At the end of the day, it's a small business, so maybe some of these big publishing houses can afford to get like very professional graphic designs in and all the rest of it. Yeah, that's one problem we've got, I guess.
No, we're just a couple of guys with like amateurish PowerPoint skills trying to throw things together. But we've definitely, I think we've come up with something a lot better than what we had in Grinder's Manual. And Grinder's Manual, it went down okay. To put it mildly, it went down okay in the community. It went down well. So hopefully this will be nicer to look at, guys. You won't be like staring at the Jack of Hearts and being like, oh, why is there a darker outline around the heart that doesn't match with the rest of the card? Like, why is there a horrible glow around the outside? I don't know, man. It's like you get used to something, you look at something for so long and you become immune to it. And then when you look at something nice and you then go back to looking at that old something again, you're like, gross. So that's kind of what happened with 100 Hands. That's why I was up till like 4 a.m. last night, just making sure that all the graphics looked a bit better. So I hope to give you guys a cleaner visual experience with this book. If you like Grinder's Manual, this is a polished, more advanced, more practical addition to Grinder's Manual. So I mean, I guess that's really it. You can go over to the website, you can grab yourself a copy. I'm going to put up a little sample extract of one of the hands up there, so you guys can have a little read through as well. The book is a bit cheaper than Grinder's Manual because it didn't take me quite as long to make. It's not quite as bulky because Grinder's Manual was entry level up, and this book is certainly not. It does build from Grinder's Manual. But final question, I guess, Carl, what kind of level should you've read this, right? So I'm going to like shoot this question over to you, so I'm not giving a biased answer. What kind of level should you be at before you pick up 100 Hands and really expect to benefit loads from it?
I mean, it is a fairly advanced book, so I would suggest reading through TGM first. Yeah. If you've never picked up TGM or you're not confident with the concepts that are in there, then I think you might struggle a little bit with 100 Hands. But like I say, I mean, there is a range of stakes in there, so you're still going to find like exploitative thinking. It's not all going to be, really advanced theory stuff. Yeah, I just say give TGM a read and then move on to 100 Hands. You don't need to be like crushing 25 or 50 NL or anything like that to read the book. No. You just need to be not a complete beginner.
Yeah, you need to have an idea. You need to understand concepts like, implied odds, range building, polar, things like this. If you understand these kind of concepts and you're familiar with most of Grinder's Manual, you're never going to know all of Grinder's Manual because, like, I don't even know it all anymore because it's so vast. Like, it's difficult to take in absolutely every detail of that. So we're not saying that, but we do want you to have, like, a reasonably decent grasp of TGM before you embark on 100 Hands. So if you're seeing this podcast and you've never read Grinder's Manual, don't just go out and read 100 Hands. That's the wrong way to go about it. Get Grinder's Manual first and then read 100 Hands when you've taken months to work through Grinder's Manual. So I'm not in a rush for anyone to buy this book. I want them to get it at the right time. But if you have read Grinder's Manual, this book is for you. That's who it's targeted at, is someone who's just read the Grinder's Manual or has read it recently or still retains most of the info from it. Absolutely. Any final thoughts, Carl?
No, just thank you very much for letting me review it. It's kind of, I guess my job's been probably a bit nicer than some proofreaders might be, where they're not necessarily interested in the material, but I've been lucky enough to get an advanced copy of a book I'm interested in, so it's not been hard at all. It's been great.
Thanks, man, and your work has been invaluable. Without your attention to detail, like, it would be littered with mistakes. That said, if you guys pick up your copy of 100 Hands and you find that there are a few errors, please let me know. Just email me. I won't take these things personally because I'm very used to getting critical feedback. I'm a one-man business, and that's what I do. I get feedback, I improve things. So you see things you don't like, let me know. You see things you like, let me know. It was so important for me to get all the feedback from Grinder's Manual last time, and you guys all saying, a lot of you guys said things like, this is the best poker book I've ever read, without bragging, blah, 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 things like this. And because of that, that's why I wrote 100 Hands. See, if people hadn't been so positive about Grinder's Manual, I'd never have actually found the motivation to do this project. Like, I know I wouldn't. So keep it up. If you like 100 Hands, Let me know if you don't like it or you think there's things that could be tweaked. Let me know, and I will be writing another book in the future that I've already got ideas for. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a little bit more lighthearted, and it's going to be kind of like, there's going to be some narrative to it and some characters, but it's still going to be like instructional poker. So I'll send over some ideas to you soon, Carl, on that, and see what you think of it. But I'm kind of excited. I don't think I've told you about this yet, have I?
No, I don't think so. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, it's going to be characters, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to just, like, I've got some characters mapped out for, like, this home game that they're going to play, and it's going to, like, follow this home game, and blah, 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 and it's going to be pretty cool. I just want to do a bit more creative writing as well, I guess, with poker, so hopefully, I don't know, no time frame yet. Let's just take a break and then see how things go. But enjoy 100 Hands first, and I'll be back with more details of that soon. I'll be back with more podcasts really soon as well. So, alright, Carl, all the best, man. Have a good day, and I will catch you later, and I'll catch all you viewers later as well. Hope to hear from you very soon with your comments on the book. Cheers, guys.